Cemeteries are often thought of as sad and somewhat spooky places, but they are also filled with rich history. That history includes the lives of the individuals buried in the cemetery, but also the artwork and the traditions encased in the stones. Here's Ben with more.
Each fall, the Anoka County Historical Society leads a series of guided tours through area cemeteries. Although the tours take place in October, they have nothing to do with Halloween and are not designed to be spooky.
Our Monuments to Life tours, this is our 14th year, I believe, of doing these. And they started with the idea that there is just a tremendous amount of history and art and tradition and customs and all sorts of things that can be wrapped together in a cemetery tour. They're not spooky, scary places, they're places of remembrance, and we wanted to highlight that. There's a lot of stories of these past people who were in our cemeteries. There's a lot of really rich history and of artwork, of tradition, besides the individuals buried there. And it just kind of all came together and we said, let's do this. So we do 2 cemetery tours out from communities out in the county and 1 in Anoka each fall.
The tours will focus on stories, traditions, history, and graveyard symbolism. Participants will learn how a grave from the 1800s can tell the life story of a person from the carvings in the stone.
In the 1800s, there were actually catalogs. You could go through and pick out, you wanted this flower and that emblem and this symbol and that flower, and it told the story of who that person was and what their life was like. And if you knew how to read it, you could figure that out.
The tours will also look at new stones to seek to understand how our traditions have changed through the years. A highlight of the tours for many is the stories that are shared. Stories range from simple county residents who are not headline makers to some of the most well-known figures in county history, to individuals like Mr. Emerson, who has a gravesite that tells a fascinating story.
And then there are people like Mr. Emerson, who's buried in Forest Hill Cemetery, and we will be visiting his grave on October 12th. It's a Saturday evening. And Mr. Emerson had a lot to say to the world. We don't know a whole lot about his life other than what he left us on his tombstone because he was very private. We know a little bit about him. He and his wife had some issues and they're not buried side by side, and in fact it was noted in the paper that they were separated, and this is in the 1890s, so this is quite scandalous. But Mr. Emerson decided he wanted to leave the world his thoughts. He has over 1,500 words carved onto his tombstone here in Forest Hill Cemetery.
The tours are limited to a small group, but that is intentional as the Historical Society wants to set a certain atmosphere for participants.
People purchase their reservation. They will get them from the Historical Society. You can do that online or by calling us. And we only allow 25 people on a tour. And that way we know everybody is able to get close enough to hear and move comfortably as a group through the cemeteries. We do these in the evening. Part of that is because it does create a different atmosphere to have lights on all the graves, and you go to the lights and talk about that person and that person's stone. It does create a very different atmosphere that's a very intimate atmosphere that we really like to cultivate.
The Monuments to Life cemetery tours have something for the history buff, the art connoisseur, or the student of traditions. But mainly, if you love a good story, this is for you.
This is the place for stories, not spooky stories, but very fascinating stories as to why someone would put a tombstone in the shape of a tree. What does that symbolize about the person? Or why is that palm branch draped over, in stone of course, over a tombstone? Why do people do that? Who is that guy that had that really, really big monument out there in that cemetery? Who was he? Why did he get this big, tall obelisk? And just to let people know that there's some great stories here and just some very interesting artworks. If you're into art, traditions, or history, we got it.
For North Metro TV News, Ben Hale reporting.
This year, the Monuments to Life tours will visit cemeteries in Columbus, Lino Lakes, and Anoka. For more information on how to register for a tour, visit our website, northmetrotv.com, and click on NMTV News.